Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a man's world shatters when he discovers his wife's secret drug addiction and affair. Their 12-year marriage unravels as he finds drugs in her purse and incriminating texts on her phone. He reports the drug dealer, gains custody of their children, and starts anew. Despite financial struggles due to late child support payments, he prioritizes his kids' well-being. His focus shifts to healing and protecting their innocence, while contemplating the prospect of dating again. This story underscores the profound impact of addiction and betrayal on a family and one man's unwavering commitment to safeguarding his children's future. Now let's get into the story. My world came crashing down on the day that I decided to check my wife's purse. I can't pinpoint when she changed, only that it was gradual. She became more and more antsy and anxious about everything, but specifically her independent, but disabled adult brother. She started insisting that she go visit him more and more often to make sure he was okay. She swore to me that his health seemed to be declining, and I 36 took her word for it. We were married for 12 years when this started happening. I knew my wife as an energetic and fun woman. She always wanted to have a good time with me, even if it was at home. Even as she aged, she never really slowed down and always maintained her go-getter attitude. We had 2 children together, aged 9 and 6 when I filed for divorce. 8 years into our marriage, she became the primary caregiver of her disabled brother, who was largely independent anyway. She'd stopped by at least once a day to make sure he was okay, but like I said, as she became more and more anxious, she started visiting with him for longer and longer periods of time. When it came to the point that she was at his house from the moment she got done work, to 11 p.m. at night, I had enough. I never agreed to act as a single parent while she practically lived at her brother's house. I drove to his house and she wasn't there. Since I didn't have any other clues, I returned home and she was there. She claimed I must have just missed her since she came back from her brother's house. She was very clingy to her purse, which made it seem like she had something important inside. When she finally went to sleep, I checked it and I couldn't believe what I found. I found a bag of drugs. This made a lot of sense, given my wife's insane energy and growing need to be away from the house. I took her phone into my shaking hands and read texts between her and someone we'll call AP. I never checked my wife's phone before this because it was never a concern. The texts were very bad. She wasn't just doing drugs with him, she was having intimacy with him in exchange for the drugs. Just like that, within 45 seconds, I realized I did not know who my wife was. I thought she was loyal and honest and she wasn't. I thought she was a responsible and thoughtful mother, but she was not. Our 12-year marriage was over and I dreaded telling our children. We tried to conceive a 3rd child, but she only had a few miscarriages and now I didn't know if it was due to her secret drug habit. I sat on the kitchen floor as I racked my brain for any clues she'd given me and there were none. She was really good at hiding it from me, at least until that month. I took 2 hours to think about what I was going to do and how I'd handle this. First I decided to call the police. I told them AP's name and address from the texts and said I had proof that my wife was getting drugs from him. He was investigated and arrested within 24 hours. Before my wife woke up, I got the kids ready and took them to my mom's house. She woke up in an empty house and called me. As soon as I told her I found what was in her purse, she freaked out. She tried to say she didn't do them all the time, just when she needed a pick-me-up. I told her she couldn't lie to me, but she'd better use what she had slowly because her AP dealer was in jail. She was speechless. She tried to play dumb, but I told her she was wasting my time and hung up. She didn't call me back for a while, but when she did, she was devastated. Reality started sinking in, having confirmed that AP actually was in jail, and knowing I had evidence against her meant she was going to have trouble seeing her kids in the future. She showed up to my mom's house in desperation, begging me to come home with the kids so we could work through it. I told her there wasn't any hope for our marriage. I couldn't even look at her, but I did tell her I would never try to keep her from seeing our children. She pulled herself together long enough to visit with them. She didn't look good in court, and I won full custody. It was up to me when and how my wife would visit with her kids, so I made sure I was always there and she was sober. As terrible as this was, it was the best outcome that could have happened for us all after my wife's betrayal and bad habit. I got a new house for the kids and I after selling the old one. It was harder with just one income. Even though my wife was ordered to pay alimony and child support, the payments were always late. Eventually, she started working under the table and giving me what she could, but she had trouble maintaining a job. I'm glad I live with my kids and know they're safe. I've been healing and living my life, almost the same as I was before, just waiting until I feel ready to start dating again. I only want to protect our children's innocence. Today's second story. In this story, OP recounts a relationship of ups and downs since 2015, marred by frequent arguments and dwindling intimacy due to medical issues. In 2020, their partner admitted to dissatisfaction and engaged in sexting with someone else, leading to couples therapy. Later, the partner had a physical affair, prompting the author to leave and discuss the breakup with their therapist. Let's get into the story. I am writing this as a bit of journaling exercise and maybe for some support from people who have been through the same. Thanks for being so welcoming. We have been together since 2015, and early on I planned for this to be a lifelong relationship. It was rocky along the way, and this is part of the reason I never managed to propose. However, there is still a very mature ring fund which will go somewhere else now, I'm sure. Around 2019, I began to think that maybe our relationship was not going to be like I had imagined it. We fought a lot, nothing physical, of course, just disagreements and mutual pouting and discontent. Our intimate life dropped off significantly after 2016 for medical reasons, and it never really seemed to recover. In June of last year, we had a big discussion where she said in many words that I did not satisfy her, I had never satisfied her, and the thought of me in bed made her sick. It was very upsetting at the time, and in hindsight, I should have called our relationship then. But we decided initially that we would try to work our way through our problems, and we also ended up having a 4-month COVID lockdown shortly afterward, so I didn't want to throw her onto the street or anything. Around September I discovered she had been sexting some guy overseas, a total breach of trust, but I decided I would bracket it because there was nothing physical, and even though we never discussed it openly, I thought she knew that I knew. I never approached this directly, but we eventually decided we would go to couples therapy. I discovered yesterday that she slept with another man in November last year, while she was out of town on a short holiday. Some random she met online and I presume she had been chatting with for a few weeks at least. I didn't care to ask for the exact date, but it was either shortly before or shortly after our first couples therapy session. When she went to work today, I left a note on the table saying goodbye, packed a bag, and went to my parents' place for a few days. This evening, after she came home, we had an hour-long text-only discussion where she took responsibility for everything, promised to change, and asked if I would come back. I appreciated her honesty. I believe everything she has said. This is completely unlike her, something she acknowledged, and she is affected by both mental illness and gruesome sexual trauma as a child and young adult. But I said that this was a hard barrier for me and I would not consider coming back even if we continue to see couples therapy for this issue. I said I would consider going back to our therapist to work through the breakup process, as we had discussed this previously in one of our sessions, and I can see how it could be helpful. It is also something our therapist has worked on. Even if we could make our way past this and she found a way to fix herself, it would always be a part of our past and something I would never be able to reconcile myself with while we were in a relationship. I don't fully believe that there has only been one other man. I asked how many other people she has had intimate with during our relationship and she said one. But I think this might have been a very strict definition of intimate, and that she has been emotionally and physically cheating with several other men over at least the past 6 months and even up until now. She said that this is a part of her life that feels like it's without consequence, and although that is obviously wrong, I can understand what she is saying. Anyway, the number doesn't matter. One is one too many. I feel very dirty for how I found this all out, especially since I was going by a gut feeling, but I feel partially vindicated by my gut being right. I don't know if I can shake this feeling of shame for having been able to discover this, even though it is for the best that I know and that we separate. I will likely be moving my appointment with my own therapist forward a few weeks to help with where I go from here. I don't quite know how she moves on from this, but I am trying my best to focus on myself. I don't know what I will do with myself yet, because so much of who I am, what I do, what I'm like, revolves around what we were. I picked up my guitar for the first time in a few months and couldn't do much with it. I don't play as much now because I felt embarrassed playing around her. Not her fault. She was always very encouraging of all my creative pursuits. I have a few friends, but I am both a very reserved person and also someone who gets lonely easily. I might need to house share, because I don't know if living alone is a good idea for me right now. I did say that I hope we can be friends one day, and I really do. Besides the infidelity and our other problems, she's great. And we did gel in a very cool way. But in my heart, it doesn't seem likely. At the very least, as soon as either one of us starts seeing someone else, unless they're super chill, I don't think it's going to work. I've decided that I'm not going to be super candid with other people about the circumstances of our breakup. There's no need to be. But it's something that I would mention to a future partner, and I can imagine for them that it would be a bit weird for your partner to be friends with their ex who is also a cheater. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, as she will likely move to another city and we won't have much opportunity to see each other again. Anyway, that's my story. There were times this morning when I thought I might try to just let it slide and forget about it. But I'm glad the part of me which stood fast won over, because there was really no future. Knowing this, it would always eat at me. I don't know what the future holds, and I am truly scared because I have had struggles with alcohol and smoking in the past, which my partner really helped me to temper. I stopped smoking as a condition of getting together, which I'm grateful for, maybe with a sneaky cigarette every now and then at the pub, and I don't have that anymore. I have made a short list of things for me to try to do with myself for the next 4 weeks and have committed to not buying any spirits at all for now, and only smoking if I go out and someone offers. I don't go out often, so this is generally sustainable for me. If there is anything any of you have done to get past the first few weeks and months of your breakup due to infidelity, I would certainly appreciate any advice. Today's third story. In this story, Opie's wife cheated on him with their baby's pediatrician during her recovery from childbirth. He discovered the infidelity by chance and took immediate action, including obtaining a restraining order against both his wife and the doctor. They divorced, and he gained primary custody of their child. Despite the painful experience, he has found strength in self-love and a new routine, emphasizing the importance of resilience and appreciating life's opportunities. Now let's get into the story. My wife was recovering from having our first baby. Per the doctor's orders, we were waiting 8 weeks before having intimate. She was 24, and I was 26. I felt like we were too young to be parents, but at least we were married for 4 years before conceiving. This was the life I hoped for. I did everything right, according to my family, and it made me feel great. One person I met in my past told me that life isn't as simple and easy as I expected it to be, but I was goal-oriented and willing to follow any successful influencer's advice. I believed fate was on my side. Even with what I'm about to tell you, I still believe fate is on my side, because otherwise, I may never have discovered the truth. On one of the last days of waiting, I got a notification at work that there was motion detected outside our house, and a box was delivered. I only worked 10 minutes away, and it was lunchtime, so I decided to pop by unexpectedly. Besides opening my package, I thought I might be able to seduce my wife for the first time in forever. I stopped for flowers. When I got to the house, there was a really nice car parked outside. I didn't recognize it. My original plan was to knock on the door and have her open it, but I decided to use my key. As soon as I walked in, I heard our bed squeaking upstairs. I barged into our bedroom door without realizing I broke it. I could not believe what met my eyes. My wife was sprawled out on our bed with our baby's pediatrician. She immediately sat up and grabbed her face, repeatedly saying no in disbelief. The doctor panicked and ran. I didn't care. I'd have him on camera fleeing our house with his loose pants, which meant I'd probably be able to prove he was sleeping with my wife, which would certainly get his license revoked. I noticed the baby sleeping in the bassinet, 6 feet away from his mother as she cheated on his father. My wife immediately began saying how sorry she was. She said he seduced her because he knew she waited long enough to heal. I wanted to throw up, but I was too angry and didn't want to appear vulnerable. I told her she was the sleazy, pathetic mother. I asked her why she couldn't have just said no, why she couldn't have just waited for me to get home. I felt myself starting to break down because I was realizing my marriage was over. I didn't want to forgive her. I didn't want to have intimate with her. I told her these things, and she wailed so loud she woke up the baby. My mind started working at a mile a second as I held and bounced our son. I told her that since she was breastfeeding, she could take him with her to her mom's house. Her mother was a strict Catholic, and I wasn't even sure she would let her daughter and grandson move in. She was going to be furious at her daughter's behavior, and I'd make sure she knew the truth at some point. My wife was freaking out, telling me what I already knew, that she would have nowhere to go if we told people the truth. I forced her to move back in with her mother by telling her our house was being fumigated. My MIL wasn't too fond of me, so she wouldn't even wonder where I was. After they moved out, a major twist happened. I got an anonymous typed note in the mailbox that said, "Leave me out of it, or you won't be around long enough for a second marriage." I was shocked, but immediately knew it was from the doctor. What a piece of crap. I was very amused when I checked our doorbell camera, and found him escaping with his pants down. I went to the police and filed restraining orders on him and my wife. Then I made some phone calls. I had a big family, including one lawyer. He agreed to represent me. Before the court hearing, my MIL was basically forcing my ex and son out of her house, so I had to tell her what my wife did, and how I got a restraining order because my life was threatened. She was beside herself. She told me I needed to come get my son at least, so I did. My wife absolutely hated this, and I think that's why her mom did it. She was so upset with her, but couldn't kick her out. She had trouble looking at her the same way. As terrible as my MIL was, she knew how necessary and important loyalty to a spouse was. Then you add the fact that my wife was a new mother, cheating with her son's doctor. Before I left with our son, I heard them screaming at each other, and when my MIL told her she wasn't mature enough to be a mother or wife, it was intense, but I'm sure my wife deserved this hellish new reality, stuck in her strict mother's house without me or her son. After the divorce, I was awarded primary custody of our son, and I was able to prove the doctors he was no longer allowed to practice, so he'll have to find something new to do with his life. I am so happy with the outcome from all this. I hate that it all happened, but this wasn't my fault, so I can only adjust and accept the change. She still calls me often, asking for help or complaining about things. She used to say sorry every time, but I told her to stop. I don't always answer her calls, but she does get visitation with our son. This event made me question a lot about life and relationships. I've realized how important it is to love and trust yourself. I knew I could get through this from the moment I was presented with the issue. I knew I had no choice but to go through it, and all I had was my own strength and willingness to go on. I enjoy my life because it's all I have and my son, and I have a whole new routine. My sister watches him while I'm at work, and she loves it. I enjoy my own company and my son's, and when it comes to dating, I just take it slow and make sure everything feels right about it. That's all anyone can do. I hope anyone reading this realizes how great it is to experience life at all.